there is need for us again to make sure that we find means on how we can bring the African people together. But how do we bring that to reality? There is need for us to unite. There is need for us to come together and rally behind one plan, which is set to make sure that we achieve the aspirations and the goals that we have as a continent. But the most important thing here is about the African people from all walks of life, from all parts of the world, to come together and rally behind a plan. Now, how do we do this? It disappoints me when I hear a lot of these ideas on how best we can make Africa great. Ideas coming from great men and women, bring up ideas and good ideas on how we can green Africa. But we have been talking all time, but we haven't seen tangible things that we can point out to say we have implemented these plans which we have. So there's a need for us to rise above that. The time to speak is over. It is time now to put those ideas in place and start working towards that. There's a need for unity. And unity, let me point out this to say, unity does not mean that we need to be the same. It does not mean that we need to think the same way. But it is the ability to tolerate each other with the difference of opinions. We may hear from Professor Mubaiwa, his ideas and opinions on how we can make Africa great. We may hear from Professor Lumumba on how best we can make Africa great. We may hear from Ambassador Arikana Chiombo. We may hear from Bishop Joshua Maponga. But all these ideas, how do we bring them together? I look forward to the time when I will see Professor Lumumba inviting Dr. Arikana Chiombo to meet him, and invite Joshua Maponga to meet him, invite Professor Huntington to meet and decide on one point, on put plans in place to say, how do we move this continent forward? Because we have these ideas. But what I'm observing right now is that these ideas have been there, but they are scattered. They are not united. We have not brought ideas together and sit as these great orators, these great crusaders, to come together and put plans in place and say, this is what we want as the continent, and this is the direction which we want our continent to move forward. I can confess here, and I can tell you, and I'm not afraid to say this, that I do not believe in the African Union leadership, the current leadership right now, because they have the plan, the African Agenda 2063. It's in place here, but it is an agenda which has failed even at the beginning. There's an aspiration, which is aspiration number 4, which was projected that by 2020 was the year duped to say we are going to silence all armed conflicts in Africa. But it has failed. We haven't seen any progress in 2020. People are still dying. Go in Mozambique today. People are still dying. Go in Ethiopia. People are still dying. And the African Union is still quiet. So African Union has the agenda, but does not have plans on how to implement those plans. But the great orators and crusaders like Professor Lumumba and Bishop Maponga, Ambassador Chiombo and Professor Huntington, these have got ideas, but there's need for them to come now, have a meeting, sit on the round table and discuss to say, how do we implement? We may differ in opinions and ideas which we bring, but there's a need for us to bring ideas together and consolidate them, put them together and say, this is the goal which we have as the Pan-Africanists. And now we are going to move forward in this way. And this is how we are going to move forward, so that we see some of these things which we have been talking over and over again being implemented and pushed forward.